Welcome to M01 Rocketeers, the podcast by Maria01, the Nordics' leading startup community. Join us as we embark on an inspiring journey to explore the possible, the plausible, and the preferable futures, alongside the brightest minds of the Finnish startup scene.
Welcome to M01 Rocketeers. This is Camilla.
And this is Sarita.
From the Maria01 team. Joining us today will be Nikita Zadzepin, an independent expert in EdTech, and Riku Seppälä, co-founder and general partner at Icebreaker.
Yes, thanks for having me. A few words about myself. I'm Nikita. My whole background has been in gaming in EdTech, most lately at Unity, where I led product marketing team for Unity ads for a few years. Right now, I'm working on something new that is yet to be announced soon. Of course, you can reach out to me if you want to learn more. That's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, hi, I'm Riku. So I've been in the Finnish startup scene for quite a long time. I was an entrepreneur when I was a student, and I was part of founding Aalto ES and have been heavily involved in kind of everything that's been happening here since that. Then founded two companies. I was living in Canada after I finished my studies, and then also worked for a company called Hopper that became a multi-unicorn, and then came back to Finland after that and turned to the dark side. I was the first employee at a fund called OpenOcean, doing a little bit later stage investments than we do today. And then in 2016, I had met a lot of founders that were in the idea stage and needing funding and had great ideas and great backgrounds. So I wanted to start investing and helping them earlier. So we set up Icebreaker in 2017 and been investing in idea stage companies since then.
Thank you. And now, first, let's listen to a story from the future.
Data-driven dreams. As long as I keep my jogging routine rolling, averaging 2.5 times a week, wrap up my artificial meat design studies by the year's end, and the EU gives the green light for private flying vehicles within the next 18 months, I'm on track to build my dream countryside home in precisely 6 years and 7 months. Sure, factors like annual rainfall are in the mix too, but according to my AI sidekick, these 3 are the big game changers. Handing over so much personal data to an AI felt like a leap into the unknown at first. But after hearing rave reviews from friends about its almost magical ability to make spot-on predictions using a mix of finance and health metrics, genetics, exercise routines, dietary habits, career milestones, and even personality traits, I started to believe in its power to turn even the loftiest dreams into reality, even if they seem decades away. Goalcatcher collects all my data, which is a bit spooky, but at least it's not selling it off to random third parties. Instead, it shares anonymized bits with other services to cross-check against other users as well as stock market trends, weather patterns, global commodity prices, and cutting-edge scientific research, to name a few. Staying active keeps me in shape, continuing education boosts my career and also enables my entrepreneurial plans, and all this positions me for success across various fields. But how does the EU's flying vehicle policy play into my countryside dream, you might wonder? You see, 4 years ago, taking a tip from the aforementioned AI guru, I invested in a startup developing an affordable flying vehicle for private use. The RE's calculations promised a sweet return in just over a decade. If only the EU would give the thumbs up before the startup runs out of funding. It did feel pretty risky, but honestly, who am I to say? While I diligently follow the diet and sleeping plan tailored for me by my AI and stick to its mood-enhancing color recommendations, I'm advised to wear green, I occasionally crave treats or a splash of mustard yellow or red clothing. And of course, there are uncontrollable elements. If my genetic neurological condition flares up, it could jeopardize or at least delay my dream. I'm making a determined effort not to lose sleep over this, as insomnia poses an even greater risk.
So, what were your initial thoughts after listening to the story?
I don't know. I think we are always bad at predicting the impact of technologies on the future, because kind of life changes. That's what I started thinking about. Like, this doesn't sound real. Like, it's not going to be like this, at least. I think the world around us will change so much that it's, we'll be living kind of in a little bit like a different framework than now. Then about the data, of course, this was a lot about like personal data. That's a kind of a bit like a Wild West. And my thinking is like people haven't minded it that much, like given all their data to Facebook and everywhere, just to use these services. And whenever there's like a GDPR click, like pop-up, everyone just clicks something as fast as possible to get rid of the pop-up, right? And I mean, at least that's my experience, that people don't really care that much. So Yeah, it's a interesting problem, like how to evolve it and how to solve it. Kind of, if there's, of course, there stuff to be solved because it can be misused and everything. But what the solution is quite difficult.
Yeah, I would add also that, of course, this story was a little bit AI-listic in a way. So I fully agree that it will definitely not look like this. And I think they're in a very, very early stages right now because basically the problem around privacy, I think, like if it's even a problem. So like right now, like just 66% of like Earth population just have access to internet at first. And like imagine the proportion of them who actually cares about privacy so much, so they would probably buy Instagram subscription instead of getting it for free, for example, like what you can right now do in the European Union. I have no idea how many people did that actually, but in reality, I think what you get as a benefit from that. Like I would be a little bit of advocate of advertising companies because I also kind of worked a lot there. But basically what they provide to you is basically discovery. So you can actually discover better like the products and goods. You can basically filter, they help you to filter out the noise basically because there are so many products, so many services around you. So how can you actually understand what is relevant for you? It takes a lot of research. Like if you don't really have time for research, then you rely on ads basically. And if imagine tomorrow these ads will become absolutely irrelevant, and this is basically what is poised to happen if we will have like, let's say, complete privacy over our data, then like basically targeting will disappear, right? And we will end up being bombarded with absolutely irrelevant ad data around us.
Yeah, then I guess the big ones will win because they can like put the biggest budgets and be shown to the most people. It's important for startups actually to have like very well functioning advertising markets because that's how you can also get to customers. Right. So
yeah, I think basically the biggest issue will happen with like SMBs and like basically small companies because
they'll be in trouble.
Yes, and companies who just cannot really generate enough like lifetime value from their customers to cover like acquisition costs. So and the big companies, of course, they can just wait longer. They can just like extend their payback period and whatever. And yeah, so. This is a big topic.
But I think one of the challenges there is that it's a bit like kind of what happens with AI in general as well, that people don't really understand it well enough. Like you were saying that at least kind of working in the tech field, it sometimes seems that people understand how all these things work, like much better than they actually do. But like during the COVID time, I at least felt that when I talked with a lot of people who just then, for example, were starting to use online meeting tools and understanding something more about kind of the whole online world, it's actually quite interesting to see that how many people actually have no idea how, for example, ad tracking works and why are they being shown that same top from the online web shop or something. So many people just don't understand that at all. And then I think that's something that where we would need a bit more like kind of education in the sense that then whether like kind of their privacy should be protected or not, that's a different discussion, but they would need to just realize like why is something happening.
And how do you see the data economy evolving in the future, particularly in terms of user control and privacy?
Well, if you talk about AI, basically, I think this is a function of how much data you can train your models on. And as per my understanding right now, most models right now already scrape the whole internet to train the models, like OpenAI, like companies alike. And this amount of data is already not enough for them to actually train more. So what they do right now, and there are already companies around that actually create artificial kind of synthetic data at much bigger scale. And these models can actually train on the data that's and the interactions and discussions that don't even exist. And I think going forward, if you will, it's today, right? It's 2024, late 2024, but even 5 years from now, I think kind of user-generated content and at scale will represent such a tiny fraction of the data set that these like future models will actually use. So there is a chance that the problem with like user-generated content and like privacy around that will actually not be such a big problem going forward, because it will not inform the models of the future that much.
And the lack of training data can end up into this model collapse idea that it will actually kind of.
Well, if they produce data by themselves in order to feed themselves, and this is kind of loop, right, of kind of artificial data, then the question would be around like, okay, how relevant is this synthetic data? How actually meaningful it's like? What is the outcome that can get out of it? So big questions. I don't really have any answers to this right now. But in my point, what we already put into the internet was already scraped, already repurposed, and there is no way that we can do something about it today. So most likely it will just not create a bigger issue going forward, simply because it's already in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, also, I mean, there's always been a lot of talk about this private data and how to handle it and keep it decentralized, or someone owns it and people give like their own, consent for all use, but it's really never worked. I think, I mean, these big companies have so much power, you're going to have to use them, and you've already given them your data. So it's kind of like it's happened already. It's a little bit like difficult. I don't know, like, would there be like a way to do like new legislation that would somehow, now that we've learned to actually regulate it kind of in the right way? Like I actually, like I have pretty like different thoughts about it, because on one thing, like I said, I think advertising is super important for, like, for example, for startups and new companies to kind of get their products out there. So it kind of makes the economy work. But then again, I like on this digital side, I keep thinking like, should we have made it somehow so that it works in the same way as the physical world? Like when you go to a hotel and you give them your passport, you don't expect them to kind of sell your data to someone and he comes knocking on your hotel room door and like selling you new shoes because he knows something about you, right? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we have this, I mean, and that would be illegal, right? But we have a completely different like legal framework in the digital world, and it kind of just happened because people just started doing it, and the world moves so fast that any regulation can't kind of follow up. But I've been thinking maybe we should have some ground rules, like you're not allowed to, like, people's data is always belong to the people. You can't do anything with it, like unless they, give it to you. You can use it, but you're not allowed to kind of sell it or use it outside or anything like that. Like maybe there is something that we could make the digital world work more like the physical world, which we are kind of familiar with. And I mean, and that's how humans have developed. So maybe it would actually be better. Then you don't get targeted, like, personally, someone like using the psychological traits they can pull out from the data, like what you've been doing, and then kind of manipulate people directly. I mean, that's super scary, right? Because someone might know you better than you do and be able to tell you exactly the things, like plant something in your head, right? And that is pretty, I mean, that is definitely like super scary.
Yeah. There's also the idea of a filter bubble, that you keep seeing similar content all the time.
And I think this is something like, as a political scientist, I think it's something that we haven't really kind of thought about so much, in the sense that if, for example, we would think that the government officials would be collecting as much data about us and processing that and using that for different things, I think all of us would be quite skeptical on like whether that's a good thing or not. But then on the digital world right now, like that's not really being done.
Or is it?
Maybe.
But I guess, I mean, these Facebook platforms and everything is also being used by like political interests or countries, to influence people's opinions and stuff. And if they really understand everyone very personally and figure out how to manipulate people, then I mean, that is super scary. And I think it is something that we probably should have some ground rules for, that it kind of can't happen. But then a lot of the regulation that we have is quite easy for someone who wants to do harm to get around. So we should try to somehow make it like not possible in that way.
Yeah, but that's exactly the thing that I think people are not so concerned about kind of their data being collected digitally as they would if it would be like a totalitarian regime collecting their data in order to do something with it. But in the digital world, it's not being kind of worried about that much.
No.
But do you think that people will in the future regain ownership of their data?
Well, depends on how far this future is from today. I think because in order to basically start making any kind of actions around that, first you need to, as we just discussed, understand the implications of it. So first, I think kind of the education should start. Basically, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of years from now, in schools, there will be a subject called data hygiene, similar how body hygiene. Because let's say 200 years ago, people didn't know that we have this microbes and everything, right? So hygiene was not really a thing because nobody really knew that it's actually important. And now, thanks to various pandemics and also advancements in science, now we know it, and we wash our hands and everything like this. So I think with data it might follow this particular example, but I think the education should be first. So probably not for maybe our generation, but for the next generations, it might be a bigger thing, especially if they will be trained from early years, I think.
Yeah, maybe 10 or 20 years from now.
Could be, yeah. But once you basically, the problem exists only if many people consider it a problem, and in order to consider something a problem, you first need to understand why is it bad or good or whatever. And going back to your comment around political consequences, for example, there is this big story, right, from a couple of years ago about Cambridge Analytica that was used precisely for that matter. And we will probably read stories about this election, this cycle of elections later on how content was created to target many different small communities and groups in order to basically move the needle in the way that you want. And this is scary.
I hope so. I mean, I hope it will learn about it and figure it out. And I think there are some positive signs, like with usage of phones in schools. At least in Finland now, they're actually taking away apparently the phones in schools. And it's a bit for me, it has been a bit of a weird. I have 2 kids, and it's been weird for me to learn that teachers haven't been allowed to take away a phone. And that's kind of related to the data as well, or this kind of digital world, because when I went to school, I wasn't allowed to bring my own, book or my own, PlayStation or something like that into class. So why would they be allowed to take the phone? I think it's just weird. But I think we're on this whole data thing, we're in that kind of stage, we're just letting it happen, but we don't really understand what it means yet. We don't. But all this, exactly education is very important, seeing what's happening and making kind of the right choices. And then, although not rushing into it, like the AI regulation that's been discussed, I think is kind of then the wrong thing, because then you're stopping innovation in a way that you can't really enforce. If someone else can still do it, and use AI technology in a bad way, but you're hindering it for the ones who want to do good, that's a really bad thing. So then, it's very complicated. I don't have any answers for it, but I hope we think about it a lot and try to kind of figure out the right ways to move that.
Well, of course, EU has been working on some data regulation lately, so there are steps being taken.
I think there should be definitely a governing organization around AI in particular, but I think the key component here and the key problem, of course, we shouldn't really prevent progress from happening, but also another big problem is that basically if you will compare the amount of investment that big tech right now invests into the development of AI, it's basically, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars right now. I think that compounded kind of amount of investment represents like the most of the growth of S&P 500 in the past couple of years. So, and on the other side, if you want something that will govern this amount of investment pretty much, then you also need to invest into this, let's say, governing organization. And the amount of this investment should be, I don't know, at least, 20%, like 10%, 30%, something equal. Otherwise, you will not be able to attract actually talent that understand the problem deeply and can actually come up with policies that will be reasonable and relevant. Because all this talent will go to Meta and Google and Nvidia, because these guys first pay a lot, second they give you tools in order to build things that can influence the world, and of course, like for smart people, this is a big incentive, right? Like to actually come and participate in this. So I'm just thinking that in order to make it happen, there should be like a strong push and creation of like conditions that would attract actually smart people, right, to basically participate in that. Otherwise, I really worry that we will have a set of regulations that, again, will be behind, will be irrelevant, will be wrong, and we all know that, like how it usually happens with policies.
That's really the problem with the regulation, that the field is developing so fast right now, and like even faster all the time, that it's very difficult for the political decision makers or the regulators to stay up to date on that. So.
Yeah, I think I kind of disagree with that we have to put a lot of money into it, because I think there are a lot of people who are still interested to kind of give their opinions and meet the politicians and give all the information that they want, like why are different things not good ideas, like why is it not a good idea to kind of hinder the model development, how large you make them. Well, I mean, for one thing, someone else in another country that doesn't have is going to do that. Like, do we really want to have like worse technology? Probably not, right? But I think there's some mindset thing in this regulation that we should be maybe regulating the harm. I mean, we have a lot of dangerous things, like we have knives. Like you think about physical world, and it's not like regulated that you can't have like a sharp knife because it could be dangerous, right? So think about, okay, like let's instead like uncover those things where people are using them for like bad behavior, and then be really hard on that instead. Or on the data side, like making like strict. Like on the data side, we could have had strict laws that you're not allowed to share any personal data to anyone else. No one is allowed to use it. And that would be, I mean, it's probably not, I mean, it's of course not as simple as that, but somehow we tried to regulate, I think, the wrong things. So we should have more thoughtful thinking around that, like not hindering innovation. Like, for example, in the GDPR thing, I mean, I haven't at least seen that it has had like a major impact on a lot of, it's been like huge costs even for small companies, and like to understand like what can they actually do, no one really knows, a lot of lawyer time, then you have all these pop-ups that no one cares about. So it's kind of, I think the actual impact of that has been very minimal, and how much time has been, like resources have been put in that. Companies used a lot of time, these politicians used a lot of time. It's probably not the right place to regulate that thing. Like it should probably be a little bit different. And I think it's always bad if we, like at least looking from a startup technology development perspective, if politicians tell like entrepreneurs and companies what type of technology, for example, they should be using, how should they be storing things. I think that goes like too far. It's not because, and then if someone wants to do harm, they will just not follow it. So, and it's very hard to enforce. So probably not very effective. So I think we need to think like, take a step back and kind of think about what can actually be regulated so that it makes sense and often not hinder innovation.
Or would it then be possible to users to own the data, and then maybe AI assistants, for example, could kind of use the anonymized data to kind of only kind of loan the data to the
Yeah, I think,
third service?
I definitely think if we would have these kind of laws that would say how you can use people's data, companies would innovate around that. It would probably be different, but we would have solutions and then they would actually be used, because I think we have the solutions, but no one's really forced to use it, and consumers don't start looking for, okay, where do I get like a social media service that's, data privacy first. They just use the one where their friends are at, right? So you can't really do a different choice. So you can't really, I don't think that's like not a way to, like a company that's trying to help people with their data privacy today. Like if you try to create a new social network just based on privacy, it's just really hard.
But there is this new regulation in my understanding that these platforms need to open up so that users can kind of send messages between different platforms to solve this issue exactly.
Sounds even harder.
But I don't know if it's so difficult. Then they put something else that you can't share. Just messaging between is probably not enough. And I don't think we can go there, because it's like, they open up messaging, but then no one uses it, and they make it really a bit difficult to use, and then it doesn't change anything. So that's probably the wrong layer again to regulate, because you can't really make it work, and it's very easy to work around it.
And I have a really good example, basically how what Apple does in terms of workarounds and how to prevent you from installing like first-party app stores that we are now forced to allow in European Union. But essentially you can do this. But in order to do that, you would need to go through like myriad of pop-ups explaining you how risky it can be, how dangerous it can be, how Apple is good in terms of like keeping your privacy with them, not with you. That is also a very important point. And effectively, like they are forced to allow you to do something, but as was mentioned, it's really easy to create a path to this kind of law, like so complex and whatever, so nobody will actually use it after all. I agree that we should probably make a step back, because just forcing companies to do something with all this kind of comes with a backslash.
Yeah. And maybe in that case, like instead enabling innovation, because I think with new AI, there is a chance that like the App Store even becomes, at some point, it loses its significance. And like now, Google, for example, because of the competition from ChatGPT or like LLM-based search, is probably is in a difficult place. And that's because of innovation. That's because we've let them actually create these great AIs that change the world, and that then disrupts the current leader. It's not by like kneecapping or trying to figure out, like using probably hundreds of millions of resources to figure out that, okay, yeah, Apple has to open up somehow, and it's because it doesn't work. It's so easy for them to make it impossible for users anyways, and that's not what users are maybe looking for, like politicians, and we don't know what users are looking for. So I think you need to kind of let it run. And of course, there are places where, probably this kind of splitting up companies does make sense. But in these fast-moving industries, I'm not sure it kind of like, I think things will change. There are always new innovations. So rather like let new innovations come up and have less regulation so that competitors can, join and can grow fast and can challenge the incumbents instead of trying to kind of manage the big companies.
And looking ahead, how do you think AI could gather and use data in the future? What kind of innovative solutions could come out of that?
Well, I guess AI is already. I mean, it's an interesting question, like the IP rights of using data for AI. Like if you've created something, should you be paid for it? You know, that the AI is using it. But it seems to me right now that it's pretty impossible, because anything you put out that's public will be, you know, usable by the AI. And it's very difficult to put like a value on, okay, what has been your specific thing or something like that. I don't see that actually working out, or us figuring out like a good way to do it. I think that's again a little bit about this, like letting innovation happen. So anyone who's created that now also has everyone else's creations in their hands and kind of can enhance their work with the AI. So instead kind of focusing on the opportunities than trying to protect the past, because it's going to change. It's just really difficult. I mean, and then if you start regulating that, then you have to have everyone in the world doing it, because otherwise someone in, you know, somewhere far which doesn't have the regulation, they will be creating the next level things that everyone wants to consume because they don't have the same regulations, like the same hindrances. So it's really difficult in this super globalized world where the data is already out there and everything, to try to pull something back. And I think if we try to do that in the EU, I think we'll just get like worse, and everyone else will just run past us all the time.
But for example, there are some companies who offer this solution of storing your data from different, for example, equipment and gadgets, like your health data and so on, and just combining all the data to give you maybe predictions or insights on your health, just keeping everything, all the data very private.
I think that's actually very inspiring in the sense that like kind of the easier it becomes to measure different aspects of your life. Like for example, what Aura's been doing, or different like other these health or wearable tech in that sense. So it's quite inspiring to also see like kind of what can you learn about yourself as well with that, and what sort of patterns can you recognize. But obviously then the ownership of the data is another thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's super. I would actually, like, I think it's great that we can, because a lot of the healthcare data has been like closed at the healthcare providers, and we haven't been able to learn anything from it because the laws are super strict on that, even if it's kind of anonymized. Like even pictures are like if you've taken like some, you know, imaging, some x-rays or something, even if you don't know who the person is, you can't use that data because it is personalized, because it's your picture of you, right? Even if no one could ever know who it is. So we haven't been able to use that to kind of innovate and stuff. I think this personal data is super interesting when people can choose to give out their data, and then you can choose, yes, you know, I trust this service. Of course, I wouldn't give it to like just any service that I see. If, you know, it's one guy somewhere doing his own thing, maybe I wouldn't give him my whole life data. I don't know like what could happen to it, right? But I think that those opportunities are super interesting, and I think people need to be kind of educated about it, what they do, and then we, you know, do need to go after the ones. I think there should be like laws, and we should go after the ones who use it for like bad purposes. If they start manipulating you or selling your data or something like that should be restricted.
Yeah, of course it's a risk, but just imagining if we would be able to trust these services.
Yeah, no, I would definitely do. I mean, I give out a lot of my data just to learn. I think it's super interesting, and haven't yet at least seen the risks of it. I'm not sure even how someone would use all that data against.
Well, I do know a few examples of how it can be used in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. So, for example, right now there are like a lot of cases already happening. Then someone can just like clone, for example, like your voice from your presentation anywhere, like for example at Slush, and then use your voice in order to call your friends and, for example, ask for money. And
exactly.
These are the things that happen like already. And next stage will be using your actual face. Again, from the video that was pulled from YouTube, from your, let's say, Slash presentation, right? And then it will be you calling to your friend through the FaceTime, for example, and asking for money, right? And yeah, I think basically bad guys, they're also super fast in terms of basically equipping themselves with the latest tech. And it's actually really scary. Like, I have actually even a personal example of a friend of mine who sent like a significant amount of money to that kind of person because of just one voice message.
Crazy.
Literally. So
yeah, but I think that's good. I mean, but it's nicer when it's this public data. We can all learn that you can do this, right? And we can all learn that, okay, you can't really trust any voice, you can't trust any video.
Yeah.
Even scarier is like, you know, the things we don't know. Like if I give like my health data to some platform, which some platform might have, like how could they use that and then, you know, combine it with other types of data, and what are all the things you can do is pretty, like connecting to your car as well or things like that. I mean, you know, there is a lot of really scary things that can happen. So
there, I think it's really about like kind of who then has access to that data, like you said, that like whether it is then like some malicious entity who would do something with it. But in a way, I think it's nice that kind of we are developing the technologies also to measure different kinds of things. That, for example, the healthcare system typically has been measuring sickness. Like you go there when you are sick and then like you're getting the x-rays or you're getting blood samples or whatnot. But nowadays there's so much more kind of measurement being done on kind of the prevention in mind. And I think that is something that will improve all of our health in the future, in the sense that we start understanding very, very different things and you can tweak your own kind of habits, for example, based on the preventive data that you already have access to.
Yeah, and some AI coaches, for example, can give us tips or like teach us how to do things better and how to prevent sicknesses.
I think basically most of our current diseases, like that are like the most dangerous ones, right? Like cancer or dementia, or like things that we don't really know like how to cure like fully. I think like they should be, the best we can do is basically predict and basically identify the patterns that bring you to this kind of disease as early as possible. Then it's relatively possible to do something about it. And this is, I think, where I can actually work quite well, because basically the best thing that those neural models can do is they can process a vast amount of data and then just find patterns inside this data much better than any humans could do. So yeah. Prevention and prediction at that stage, I think basically this is my biggest, my favorite example is that already there are papers that neural models found new antibiotics, for example, and this year. And I think this is fascinating because for years, like scientists couldn't really find any new antibiotics. And the problem was that with people taking these pills throughout their lifetime, that bacteria become like resistant to these antibiotics, and then you are done, right? There is no cure for, let's say, pneumonia, like then you are like at your like 70s, for example, right? Because it's like antibiotics will not work. Yeah. And now there are like new them coming, and I think this is super
yeah,
cool.
and for this we actually need to share data. So yes. I think there's a lot of benefits from that. And then I think more of the kind of like maybe there also like the regulation shouldn't be in kind of using that data because it has so many benefits. But then like what are the negative consequences of, you know, if someone uses that data in the wrong way? And then we should be maybe regulating that, like if someone has used it in, you know, for the wrong purposes, then we kind of find them and shut that down instead of shutting everything down at the source where there can still be a lot of benefits from using that data. And then at least like maybe, I mean, people could of course give consent to use their data. I would be happy to kind of give consent to use any of, you know, my health data or something for research purposes if it can help something. But I think right now we're not even doing that. We're not even asking for consent, or at least we might be asking for it afterwards, but that's impossible because no one, you can't get the message through. So there's a lot of things to think about there so that we can get the benefits and then think about, okay, what are the actual risks in these things?
And especially on the investment side, do you think that AI would be able to predict like market trends or societal changes or big trends or something useful for you?
Yeah, it helps a lot. But then when everyone has it, it always levels the playing field. So it doesn't really change anything. Like when you got real-time data, for example, from the stock exchanges, there were people who could for a very short time use it to their advantage because they had, got the data faster. But then pretty soon after everyone has it, and then everyone has the same information. So that's kind of how the markets work. But I think innovation, we'll be doing better investments because we have more data. Faster, we can use more time to actually talk to founders, use more time to kind of go through an analysis that's automated. Everything will be faster. So I think everything is improving, but I don't think it will be in a way where AI will be able to say what the best investment is, because then everyone would know it, right? So
then it's not going to be the best investments already.
No,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So But yeah, I'm like so super excited about everything that's happening in AI, and I think we still have like a very long way to go to get all the benefits out of it. And the models are getting better all the time, and the UIs and the ways to use it, and all the software that uses it. So it's super exciting. There's something coming out every day that's new, and which I'm sure like in that, also in robotics and artificial foods and energy and transportation. I just read this book, Rethinking Humanity, I think it's called, which I think everyone should read. It's like a very positive view of the future, because we're a lot like focused on the negative things about this data and everything. But hey, let's think about the positive. There's like a huge amount of great stuff going on that gives a lot of new opportunities, and the world is going to be like amazing in 10 years.
And just wanted to also ask about personal planning then. How do you think that AI could help you with that?
With like, what do you mean, like personal planning, like managing my schedule, or planning in terms of what I want to achieve in like 5 years? So like,
yeah, maybe like fulfilling your dreams, for example, like was the topic of the story.
Well, I think if we go to gaming, for example, I think there are already first signs of tools that basically render 3D worlds around you based on prompts, or based on like today's prompts, right? Tomorrow it's going to be your previous behavior, I guess. And there are already kind of early signs on that. So not sure if it's going to be like a real dream that AI will help to accomplish that fast, but definitely I think we will see way more personalized kind of virtual worlds very soon, because basically this personalization cost will just like decrease, right? Like previously you couldn't really build a game, a personal game per like each and every person on Earth, like in probably not 5, but maybe 15 years from now, probably it's going to be possible in some extent. So not sure if it fully answers your question, but in terms of dreams, I think like most people will actually be super happy about it.
But I can imagine that it would actually help quite a lot, in the sense that, like, if you think about a dream that you have a goal and you'd like to achieve it, so then you would need some kind of a path towards it. So maybe AI could help in kind of drafting that, in the sense that, like, if you think that you're a young person who doesn't really know that much about like the world just yet, so then kind of let's say that I want to become a very successful startup entrepreneur and like kind of build the next unicorn. So how should I go about it? So who should I reach out to? Which investors would be the best ones to contact? Or which people should I have in my network? What kind of network should I build and all that? So I think there might be like kind of like that data being used so that I could draft a personalized path to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think everything is going to get kind of better. We can do more. As I think it's always kind of been with development, then but we always have the same problems. Like people were super scared of TVs when TVs came out, that people will just be sitting and or some say that people will never sit down and watch a TV. But then there are like very positive outcomes from that, like education-wise, it's super important, like the education you can get to through the TV and get the information out to people. But there are always, I think there are going to be a lot of like scary things that we're unsure of, then will make us anxious and stressed out and everything. It's not going to like solve all our problems. We're going to have as many problems, but then again, the world is hopefully, I mean, unless we blow everything up, it's going to be like a lot better. We'll have a lot more things. Everything will be cheaper. We'll be able to go like into space for our next travels, and we'll have a lot of cheap energy, and we can just go sit in our robo-cars. We don't have to drive. We'll have a lot more time to, talk to people or whatever. We'll have more time to do whatever we want, and we'll be much more efficient in all our jobs. And then, hopefully that will also, make a change all around the world. So a lot less poverty because of much cheaper materials, much cheaper energy. If we get much cheaper food that can be manufactured in a plant, then we release a lot of have a lot less pollution and everything. So there are a lot of like super positive things, but on a personal level, I think everyone will have kind of still the same problems. They'll still be anxious about stuff and so on. And I don't think everyone can still reach, because your dreams will then be much bigger. I don't really think that it's going to be a world where everyone just achieves their dreams automatically, unless we're plugged into a machine and we live like in the Matrix. But everyone always has kind of aren't there like research that even if you kind of reach your dreams, you kind of plateau to the same satisfaction level that you always have. You can't like escape your level of life satisfaction or something like that. So kind of think that it's still kind of a bit similar. But I think we have a chance to improve the lives of people who are doing really poorly. Like if there's, they don't have enough food and things like that. There's a possibility with new technology to help a lot. But then that has a lot to do with politics. Like is the political environment such that it will make it happen? Make it possible to use those technologies?
Well, let's definitely hope so. And maybe we'll end on this positive note then. Thank you very much for your insights. And remember that whenever we discuss about the future, we actually shape the future as well.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's all go make everything better.